Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name's Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. Today is our 10th episode.
Woo!
We've entered double digits.
Yeah, that's significant in some way.
Some way, yes. It's been 2.5 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice round number.
Right. So I must ask, Jeff.
Yeah?
How are you doing today?
Pretty good. It was,
cool.
The weather's kind of crazy here in Michigan.
Yeah. It was. I keep expecting it to switch over to be spring,
right?
And I keep every day that's like above 40 degrees. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be good. It's not gonna be winter anymore. And then today happens where we got like 6 inches of snow.
Yeah, it's like mid 20s. Yeah, 6 inches of snow, and then last week we had a wind storm.
Yes,
that knocked out the more power than had ever been knocked out in Michigan in history.
Yeah, for the last week driving to work, I've had to give myself an extra like 30 minutes because several busy intersections are still without power.
Right.
At least as of the night before last, we're still without power.
Yeah, there was a few on the way to work that were out this morning that just, I think just earlier today were fixed.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've noticed, probably not, but you know how in my backyard we have that little like outdoor pavilion thing? Gone.
It just got blown away?
Well, it got knocked over and it broke.
Oh.
So, and it's not salvageable.
Actually, yesterday I noticed that there was the cover for somebody's like grill.
Oh my!
On my deck, on my back deck, and I'm like,
wow.
Like at first I thought, oh mine, mine got blown off. I'll just go put it on there, and then I look and I see the cover's still on mine. I'm like, oh. This isn't mine. I don't know whose it is because all the neighbors that I could see from my deck had theirs. So I'm like, I don't know where this came from.
Wow.
So yeah, it got very windy and knocked out a lot of power, and it was just wind.
Yeah, just wind.
You think like a snowstorm, ice build up on like trees and stuff, or on power lines that would bring it down. No, it was just wind.
If I had built a house of cards out of those cards from last episode,
sure.
It probably would have gotten destroyed.
Yeah, because I think it was 35 mile per hour winds?
31 and higher, I think.
And higher, and I think we got up to we had tropical storm force winds or something. I don't know
that's Michigan
how fast
for you.
that is. It's like 60 to 80 miles per hour or something like that.
Yeah.
So a little crazy.
Yes,
but,
and then snow today, and it would have been so much nicer if I could just sit back and play Zelda all day, but it's just not an option.
And that'll do it for the InterPartyConflict forecast.
Yes. All right. Do you want to go ahead and get started, Jeff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Before we get to questions, though.
Okay.
I want you to imagine, Jeff.
Okay.
You're running around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark.
Okay, of course it is.
You hear a loud noise behind you. You hear the beat of leathery wings. Something very big is chasing you.
Why is he?
But you see some light up ahead.
Okay.
You run ahead.
Yeah.
The glint of silver and gold hits your eyes, and you realize in your flight you have stumbled upon the dragon's hoard.
Bank money. Oh, yeah. Get that gold.
The dragon's probably going to kill you.
No.
So, today for the dragon's hoard, because
all that cash,
because this is an arbitrarily significant episode, I wanted to bring in an item that I think is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
This item, I actually heard on an episode of The Adventure Zone, which is another podcast. It's a very, very, very good podcast. I would love to talk about The Adventure Zone for hours, but I don't really have time. But this item is a ring called the Ring of the Grammarian.
Mm-hmm.
This is a ring.
I like this thing.
That I think when it was originally posted on Reddit, it didn't have this limitation, but on the Adventure Zone, they limited it to once per day. But once per day, the user of this ring, the wearer, can cast a spell that they know, but when they cast the spell, they can alter, that is, they can add, remove, or change one letter in the spell's name.
Mm-hmm.
It is then up to the DM to determine how that alteration would affect the spell, what its effects would be, its duration, everything. So a lot of flexibility here.
Mm-hmm.
And, at first glance, you're like, oh, okay, I guess maybe that's a neat thing. Maybe you could maybe there's a couple useful things you could do, but we have some examples. Jeff, would you like to start or should I?
Yeah, here. Let me start off. I made a little list here. All right. Well, I'll start with a simple one. Sheep.
Yep.
The sheep spell.
Sheep.
It could summon a sheep, maybe, or it could polymorph somebody into a sheep.
Maybe it could even be a bit more abstract. It could be like an enthrall effect, so that you make the target follow whatever it is you say.
Oh yeah, like the sheeple.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, I like that. Yeah,
that's pretty good. I've got one. This one has. I think this is a neat one. Dog cloud. But wait, Jeff, let's say you cast Dog Cloud, and your Dog Cloud is being a bit unruly. You know what you cast then?
What would you do? What would you cast?
Power word heal.
Like HEEL? Mm-hmm. Very good.
But hold on. You may be asking, well, how good is my Dog Cloud's vision? Maybe you want to give your Dog Cloud some kind of echolocation. You know what you cast?
What's that?
Bark vision.
Okay. Very good.
Yep.
So yeah, obviously a very fun magical object.
Yes. You got another one?
Yeah, you could. Okay, here's what more practical. So instead of the regeneration spell, degeneration.
Yeah.
You could slowly take damage.
Sure. Yeah, I've got some that are relatively effective as well. This is a weird one. Spider limb.
Okay.
Maybe gives you like a weird
spider instead of spider
limb?
climb, just spider
Yeah.
limb. So it's like spider limb. So it just gives you one spider
one
leg.
spider limb,
like
yes.
like a regular spider sized spider leg. It's just like a hair on your arm. Like
That's actually. And what if you didn't even control it? It was just kind of moving on its own. That's kind of terrifying. Let's talk about something more fun. Okay, how about this? I got a good one. Create or destroy tater.
Wait, what? Create or destroy tater?
Yep. What we need is a few good taters.
A few good taters.
I've got a good video I'm going to put in the show notes for this episode.
I almost forget what this one originally was, but alone. Clone. Oh, it's the clone.
Yeah, alone.
Alone. It's just a spell that, I don't know, teleports you to somewhere where you're by yourself.
There you go.
or teleports everybody else away. Alone spell. Much better.
All right, here's a good one. Chill couch.
I love the chill couch.
You
spell.
summon a couch that is super chill.
Super chill. It could remove like fatigue effects, or it'd be like a almost like a charm person spell to whoever you're chilling on the couch will.
Could act like a calm emotions spell.
Yeah. Instead of change stuff.
Yep.
Or
such a specific spell.
Or this is one of my favorites that I came up with. Anti-life smell.
I think a lot of us have encountered an anti-life smell before.
Okay, a few more. I love these.
To go with that, we've got anti-wife shell. I think a lot of us guys out there have wished they had one of those. Am I right, guys? Am I right? I've got a few more. Okay. Let's say you've packed on a bit of a stomach in your years adventuring. Well, why don't you just cast Cure Pounds?
Cure Pounds.
Yep. Let's say you don't even want to go that far. Maybe you just want to cast Leomund's Tiny Gut.
Wait, what is it?
Leomund's Tiny Hut.
Oh, a tiny gut.
Yep. Or how about this? Leomund's Tiny Hat. Got a little tiny jaunty cap that goes on top at a slight angle.
What was the Tasha's one?
Oh, are you talking about Tasha's Hideous Daughter? Or how about Speak with Dad?
Speak with Dad. All right, I have one that's a little ridiculous. Speak with Danimals. Like you could speak with the Danimals yogurt.
Yep. No, I gotcha. Okay. Here's a couple I got.
Okay.
Continual blame.
Oh, that's actually a pretty good one.
I think everybody, every married guy out there has experienced that. Am I right? Am I right, guys?
Okay.
Here's another similar one. Continual lame.
Yeah. I cast that on myself all the time. For that joke, in fact.
How about this spell? Old person. What does it do? Does it make you an old person? Does it summon an old person from the elemental plane of old people? I don't know.
The elemental plane of like getting crust in the corners of your mouths.
There you go. Of smelling like soup.
Of the anti-life smell.
Yes. Or maybe you just want to go out and party and you don't care if anything gets ruined in the process. Why don't you just cast Destructive Rave? Create or destroy gator.
Oh, okay.
If you're being chased by a gator, or you need a gator to fight for you. Just, create or destroy.
Gator.
How about this one? I'm gonna give you a choice, Jeff. With this spell, finger or death. Pick one.
Oh my goodness. That one should be just like a coin flip or something.
Yep.
It's like you die or you sprout an extra finger. Permanent extra finger.
Yeah, could be good, could be bad.
Because death is permanent. Why wouldn't the finger be permanent?
That's some good logic right there. Jeff, I'm going to tell you, here's a spell that I think could inspire an entire campaign. All right?
Okay.
Mage Band.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is. You may be asking...
We should start a mage band.
Yes, we should. You may be asking to yourself, well, what genre of music will we play? Arcane rock.
Oh,
yep.
Good.
Here's a spell. Let's say your house catches fire and you have some people come and put out the fire for you. What do they hand you when they're done? Fire bill.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. Or here's a great spell. Shatner.
Okay.
So much potential with this item here.
This one is it has endless potential and it is hilarious and also could be really powerful and useful.
Yes.
Because obviously a lot of the ones we're saying are very just silly, but
yeah. I've got some serious ones too.
The fish spell, like
fish,
like you're going to turn a 9th level spell into fish.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 9th level spell. It better give you a lot of fish.
It just rains fish from the sky.
Yes. Speaking of fish, bass cure wounds.
Or alternatively, base cure wounds.
And you know who would use a base cure wounds?
Who's that?
The mage band.
That's okay. All right.
Yes. All right. I do have a couple more that are functional. Rage armor.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that a cool idea?
Yeah, I mean, because barbarians don't normally.
It could be. It gives your barbarian armor while they're raging. I think that's a neat effect. Could also be that it gives the target armor that feeds off of their anger or something. Like the more angry they are, the better the armor gets or something.
Or could protect from like raging foes or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a great one. Makes it so like, let's say if a raging barbarian attacks you, they don't get the benefits of their rage.
Oh yeah, like because like mage armor is pretty low. It's a low level spell.
First level spell, yeah.
So you mean like that seems like almost plausible. That like yeah.
Another one, healing sword.
Okay.
That's kind of cool.
Sword.
Final Fantasy games have had like weapons that heal damage instead of dealing damage.
Oh, true.
Yeah, there's some potential with that. Here's one that I thought was neat, but it was more the description that one of the people on Reddit gave. So the spell is fold person. And Reddit user Music Mole, he put in quotes, "You watch in horror as the bandit leader bends into himself. His screams cut short as an audible squelching emanates from his midsection. The sound of cracking, grinding bones sends an involuntary shiver up your spine."
You can't hear it, but my mouth is wide open.
I can't see it either because we have these goofy things in front of the microphone to reduce the room noise. So I'll take your word for it, Jeff. Yeah, so I think this is a really, really cool spell. A really cool item, rather. In the podcast, The Adventure Zone, it's an actual play podcast. So it's these three brothers and their dad playing 5th edition D&D. So I won't go on for too long, but I just want to stress, it is my favorite podcast of all time.
Yeah.
It's really, really well produced, and all of the people playing, the DM, which is the youngest brother, and then his two brothers and his dad are the players, they all are very, very engaging. They have hilarious rapport with each other, which I guess you can understand from a family. Not only that, but these three brothers, the McElroy brothers, have had an improv comedy podcast for like 6 years.
Okay, cool.
So they are hilarious. And the writing, everything else aside, the writing of this campaign that, unless I'm mistaken, was all written by Griffin McElroy, is freaking amazing. Every single arc of this campaign on multiple occasions has made my jaw drop with some sort of a twist or just something awesome that happened in it. The DM, Griffin, he does such a good job of giving the players some way to shine. Even if the encounter is just like something relatively minor, he will come up with some way for them individually to do something awesome. And that is such a good talent for a DM to have. I hope that I could be a DM as good as he is. Anyway,
I'm finding more and more that like something like improv training is really helpful. Like even in just like everyday life too. Like it keeps coming up in different things that like I'm actually considering I need to take like classes or something.
Couldn't hurt. I mean,
honestly, it really couldn't, because
I think it's something that comes more naturally to some people than others.
Sure, but I mean, like even if it doesn't come naturally, like just having an idea, just a couple little like tips or something like that, like it could even just help with social interactions in general. Like,
I'm sure it could. Now that you mentioned it, I think just about anybody could benefit in some way from improv training. But in this podcast, there was a time in the most recent arc. I won't go into too many specifics because I would love for everybody to go out there and listen to this, and I don't want to spoil anything. But
sure.
The cleric in the group just picked up this ring, and he's only used it one time so far, and I think the campaign's almost over. But he used it to, I think, great effect. It was in the climactic battle of the what I believe is the final arc of the campaign. There's still a couple episodes left to like wrap stuff up. But in this climactic battle, one of the players was how can I explain this without spoiling anything? Basically, one of the players was taken out of his body and put into the body of this wooden mannequin that then came to life. And they're fighting his body. Like the bad guy possessed his body, and so now they're fighting him. The player that's in the mannequin body is like, he's very ineffective at just about anything. Well, everything was just about, they were about to get beaten when the cleric came around to his turn. He said, all right, I'm going to use this Ring of the Grammarian. I'm going to cast Divine Word, except I'm going to make it Divine Wood. And I don't think the DM really gave too much insight into exactly what the effects of this was, but he basically gave some sort of like a divine buff to the player that's in the wooden mannequin body.
Very good.
And I just it came out of nowhere, and I was like, my jaw dropped when I was listening to this. It was awesome. So
cool.
So the Ring of the Grammarian, I think, is hilarious, and there is so much potential. I didn't even get through all of the things that I got.
I just honestly just look it up online. Like you'll find like lists of people just playing around with it.
Yeah. It's so much fun.
Like because it's up to the DM's discretion. Like they can work it into the game however they want. They can use it as however they need it.
It is as powerful or as weak as the DM wants it to be, which is great.
Basically, when the player is giving the DM like that kind of control, that could be disastrous. But that can also be like the thing that the DM really needed to tie that adventure together or something, Yeah. So really, really cool magical item. I like it a lot.
All right. Jeff, you want to go ahead and get into some questions?
Sure, let's do it.
Well, first, if somebody wanted to submit a question or if they wanted to submit an item for the Dragon's Hoard, where would they do so?
They could probably go to interpartyconflict@gmail.com, send us an email. They can go on to Reddit at r/interpartyconflict.
There you go.
And what is our Twitter is InPartyConflict?
Yes, at InPartyConflict.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so any way you can contact us, go ahead and send us questions, send us items. And we've even, if you have any suggestions for other segments to have on the podcast, anything that you would love to hear us discuss, go ahead and send it to us, and we'll we'll find some way to work it in.
Yeah. I mean, I like talking about magical items and stuff. That's always
Well,
fun.
one idea I had for a segment that we might do is maybe have like sort of like a section where we talk about, we read stories that people sent in.
Sure.
Like we might give a topic, like send us a story where one of your characters almost died.
Right.
Or maybe like send us a story where your character did something really, really badass.
Yeah.
And yeah, we could read stuff like that. We could call it like Tavern Tales or like stories from the campfire or something.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, InterPartyConflict@gmail.com. So let's get into some questions.
All right. So first question comes from Baron Aram Heshvan through Paizo. Who was your best DM, and what is one thing that blew your mind?
My best DM, I would say, is my friend Chris. I've talked about him on the podcast a lot.
Sure.
With good reason, because
Right.
I've played a lot of D&D with him, and he was my he was my DM for a lot of that, and I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, no, he's very good.
Yes, both as a DM and as a player. He's always got a trick up his sleeve, and he's always going to give you a memorable experience.
Yeah.
One thing that really blew my mind that to this day is still like one of my favorite examples of DMing ever. It was my first session where it was the first time he was my DM. It was my second session playing with that group. I talked about there was a group that I joined that made me a better player as well as a better DM just by
Right.
playing with them.
Yeah.
This was in like 2003, I think. And I started...
No one was alive then.
I started in this group, and I was playing the character Ichi. I may have mentioned him once or twice. He was a barbarian that used a katana. I was very big into samurai at the time. I've actually thought of, if I ever want to have like episodes, if we're ever not going to be able to record an episode for a week, I might just record kind of like a big thing about Ichi and like the progression that I made with him as a character,
yeah.
and then like what I learned playing him, and then what I've done with him after the campaign was over.
Okay.
So I think I mentioned in a previous episode that like he's one of the NPCs that kind of shows up in every campaign that I run in some form or another.
Right, I'm pretty sure I've ran into him a couple times.
Probably. So I think it could be, just an interesting little story if I ever need like a short 20 or 30 minute episode.
That's a good idea.
Anyway, so I was playing this character Ichi. And so Ichi was like chaotic neutral. He was a samurai, and he wasn't super intelligent, but he wasn't super dumb either, because the way we rolled for stats, my lowest stat was like a 12 or something. But everybody was like that, so it wasn't unbalanced. So we started playing. Chris was DMing. This was a group where we switched up DMing. So the first session, somebody else was DMing, and then Chris took over after that. He was running a long adventure that had us go through the Underdark and so on. But we get into this tomb. I don't remember the circumstances, but the beginning of the adventure, we go down into this crypt, and we're going through, and we decide, hey, we're adventurers. Let's go and loot some of these coffins.
Of course.
So at one point, one of the other players goes over to a coffin. They open it up, and they notice that there's a corpse in there. He was holding like a magical spear. And so they're like, oh, cool, I'm going to take that spear. So the DM goes and tells them, okay, you have a spear of, plus whatever. And so, I thought, hey, I can do that too. So I tell Chris, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and open up this coffin here. And so Chris starts describing, okay, you open up the coffin. Inside you see there's a corpse. And you notice that this corpse has like sort of like a stick like in his chest. And you notice that he seems to have really big teeth. And you see he's got a golden ring on his hand. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, sweet, a golden ring. Awesome. All right. Yeah, I got some treasure. Gold ring. I write down gold ring on my character sheet. And then I'm like, that stick that he had, I'll go ahead and I'll take that too. Maybe that's magical too. Because I'm thinking, the previous player, the corpse was holding like a spear. So I figured maybe it was something similar to that. Never mind the fact the rest of the players are on the group, all their jaws are dropped and they're like staring at me. And so the DM's like, okay, so you take the stick? I'm like, yeah, I take the stick. And the DM, Chris, says, okay, so you take out the stick. You got the ring in your hand, and then the corpse comes to life, grabs you, pulls you in the coffin, closes the coffin. Roll initiative. And it was at this point where I realized, oh, this is clearly a vampire.
Sure.
In
retrospect,
this corpse with big teeth with a stick in his chest. Clearly that is a vampire.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I think that this is a really important thing because we had a little discussion after this. The encounter played out. Ichi was fine. Don't worry. Ichi was fine. But after the encounter was over, we had a little talk as a group because I was like blown away by this. And one of the other players in the group, his name was John, his way of describing what had just happened, he said, If the DM is running a situation like that, where there is a vampire in a coffin, and, a random nobody opens up the coffin and sees it. If the DM says to the player, you open the coffin and you see a vampire, the DM has failed.
Right.
Unless that character is very well versed in undead and maybe religion and so on and so on. If you're just a normal person, like Ichi was basically just a normal dude, a normal mercenary who was out to, score some money, he is not going to see this corpse as, oh, this is a specific undead, here's how it works. He's going to see, number one, it's a dead body. Number two, it's got big teeth. Number three, oh, sweet, there's a gold ring I can take. The DM, Chris, he gave me the information that the character would be getting. Not the information that the player would be getting, the information the character would be getting. Mm-hmm. And now partly it was because I wasn't really paying a ton of attention. I'm sure some of the blame falls on me, but
I mean, that plays into like a character going in for the money. Like they're not really paying attention.
Exactly. So like Chris knew exactly how to put the information across to me that would result in the most interesting outcome.
Sure.
I would not have a story to tell if I was like, okay, so I started playing with Ichi, I opened up this coffin, there was a vampire, I took his ring and closed the coffin. That's not a story. Nobody cares about that. But instead, when, no, Ichi got pulled into the coffin, the vampire closed the coffin. That right there is a great story. To this day, like I'm still telling this story
Sure.
like 10 years later. And not only that, but like, not only was it memorable.
No one was alive then, dude.
But this was a great example of a writing concept of show, don't tell.
Right.
If you're writing something, if you just tell the reader something, okay, I guess you get across the information. But if you show them that by saying what they do in response to this information that you haven't given them, that is such a more powerful way of getting across the information. Maybe it's not as effective because effective is just getting across the information, whatever means possible.
Right.
But it is much more engaging.
Right.
And people are going to remember that so much more than if they just read a list of facts.
Sure. Yeah, it's more entertaining, which is what this is all about, is for entertainment. It's fun. That concept is also something important in like video game design and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Because nobody likes to tap A for 30 minutes getting through dialogue.
Right.
I'd rather you just show me the world than tell me about it.
Right. Like in Dark Souls, environmental storytelling is so much cooler than just someone telling you, hey, this room housed blah, blah, blah.
It's so engaging and interesting. Nobody really knows the full story of Dark Souls, and people are still delving into it and like coming up with different theories and stuff. They're still getting entertainment out of it.
Right. Whereas if there was just like, okay, you click a button and you get a list of the history of Lordran and all the characters and everything, it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's cool. Yeah. But like once you're done reading it, you're not going to go and discuss it with other people because there's nothing to discuss. It's all right there on the page.
And I mean, you get a bit of that like with like the item descriptions and things like that. But even that's still like, oh, I found this item and it had this thing on it that kind of sort of alluded to this other thing.
Yeah,
Isn't
even
that cool?
those,
it is.
Those just hint at what the truth is.
Yeah, it's never like this was so and so's sword. He did this. It was like, this sword has this name on it.
Like, which is cool. There's another Dark Souls example. I'm sorry to make this the Dark Souls cast, but I think it's a good example of what Chris was doing. If you go down into, let's say you open up a tower with a key that you got. You go down in the tower and you find this dude in this badass armor carved out of a block of stone, wielding the tooth of an eternal dragon.
Oh, God.
And he stomps you. In one hit, he kills you. And let's say someday you come back and you kill him and you find that he has a ring on you that you find out is Havel's ring, the ring of Havel the Rock. And you're like, oh man, who the heck is this guy Havel the Rock? And then later on, you find a hidden room that not only has all of Havel's equipment in it, but also has a weapon specially designed to kill Havel's best friend.
Huh.
That tells you so much more of a story than if you just find a book that says there was once a guy named Havel the Rock and he was secretly plotting to kill his best friend.
The end.
The end. Like, it's so much
Yeah.
cooler when you are learning the information by working it out in your head rather than just having someone just tell it to you.
Right. Yeah, allows your imagination to fill in the gaps, which, like your imagination knows your brain better than the writer does.
Whatever the player or the reader or the listener or whatever they make up in their head is going to be so much more powerful than anything that you can tell them.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that's a great example of why I think Chris is a great DM.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of other examples, but I could go on about that for years. So,
well, my best DM would probably be, I don't know if you know him, but he's sitting across from me.
Oh, is it? You mean? Oh, no, Jeff. That's not a person. That's a little plush doll of Fry from Futurama.
Oh, okay.
Are you
Sorry.
maybe thinking of the episode of Futurama where Gary Gygax gave Fry his +1 mace?
His +1 mace. Well, we could play D&D for all eternity. No, I mean, not to discredit you, but I haven't had many DMs.
That's fine. I understand.
But no, I had a great time with the Age of Worms campaign, and I know you had a good time.
I had a very good time with that campaign.
We'll bring up the end of that campaign that I think we tied up pretty good.
I think so.
But like the last boss, basically, like we had a few things we could do to prepare for it and to kind of make the battle a little bit easier.
Yes. Just for a little context, the end boss of this campaign was a god.
Right. It was
Kius, the god of undeath.
Right. It was like a god that wasn't at full power.
Yet. He became a god a long time ago and then was defeated or locked away or something. It's been a long time.
I think he was locked in a crystal or something on the top of a tower. I don't know. I kind of remember.
Well,
maybe.
But anyway, some of his minions by the end of the campaign had managed to bring him back to life.
Sure.
Or undeath.
Yeah. So yeah, dealing with basically fighting this god. And trying to find there's a few things we could do to prepare for it to make it a little bit easier. One of which was go and get a Sphere of Annihilation.
Yes, and this was a pre-written campaign, and the way that they get this Sphere of Annihilation to the players, well, first off, it uses in the very first adventure the players get a Talisman of the Sphere.
Oh right, we got that really early on.
Yeah, in the first adventure. It's an artifact that doesn't really do anything other than lets you control a Sphere of Annihilation. Mm-hmm. So they give you this Chekhov's gun, if it were, this Chekhov's Talisman of the Sphere, and then 13 adventures later, you can actually use it.
Sure.
And but then it has the players go to the Tomb of Horrors.
Right, yeah.
Which I mentioned in a previous episode. So they go to the Tomb of Horrors, get a Sphere of Annihilation, which is a very prominent feature in one of the early rooms of the Tomb of Horrors.
Right, it's
and then take it.
When they featured it in one of Dungeon magazine.
It was on the cover of the Dungeon magazine of best adventures of all time or whatever.
So yeah, went and got that and then used it on him, and it was it just did did a bunch of damage to him or something.
So the adventure presents it as if the players bring the Sphere of Annihilation with them. There's a couple different things they can do with it. They can use it to so Kius, he has a bunch of magic abilities, but he also has a very, very powerful weapon. He has a giant executioner's mace. This crazy, crazy weapon.
Yeah, it was designed specifically
because an artist in an earlier adventure just drew a cool weapon, and they were like, oh, that's really cool. Let's do something with that. So they can use the Sphere of Annihilation to destroy his weapon or destroy his cloak, which gave him all sorts of defensive bonuses. In the end, you guys decided to destroy the cloak.
Yeah, I think that was the way to... Because I think Steven's character was beefy enough to take the damage or something.
I think so. And then it was he was having trouble hitting Kius.
Yeah.
So if they could get rid of the cloak, then he could use it to
right. Yeah, because Steve's character was incredibly overpowered.
He did a couple hundred D6 worth of damage.
Right, but
in a round.
But because he couldn't hit it, we couldn't use that to our advantage. So yeah, getting rid of that.
Right.
But anyway, so using this Sphere of Annihilation, I think it was basically Kius was well, I'll have none of that, and he casts.
Okay, so sorry to keep interjecting.
No, you're...
So they used the Sphere of Annihilation to destroy his cloak, and then when Kios' turn came around, I was like, well, yeah, I can't just keep the Sphere of Annihilation sticking around. So what I did, I looked up how to destroy a Sphere of Annihilation. There's a few different ways. You can hit it with like a magic item that Kios didn't have. There's a couple spells you can cast on it, one of which, if you cast Gate on a Sphere of Annihilation, there's a 50% chance that it just gets rid of the Sphere of Annihilation.
And it's just gone.
The other 50% chance, though, it causes like a, 100-foot sphere around the Sphere of Annihilation to get transported to a different plane.
Yeah, to a random plane.
So, I had Kios, of course, he's going to get rid of the Sphere of Annihilation. So I had him just cast, he's got a, unlimited 9th level spell. So I had him cast Gate on the Sphere of Annihilation. I rolled, and everything gets transported to a random plane in the middle of this boss battle. And the characters were up on top of this giant tower.
Right.
Fighting a god up on top of this giant tower.
So the top of the tower gets sent to another plane.
Yeah.
Gabe rolls for a random plane, but finds a way to tie it in perfectly with the campaign.
With the campaign. So I rolled randomly. I kind of just brought up a list of all the planes in 3rd edition D&D. I rolled, and it came up with Arcadia, which I had never even thought about. It's a mildly lawfully aligned plane. And I guess it didn't really upset the battle any. I mean, it got rid of the Sphere of Annihilation, but suddenly the giant top of the tower that this god was born from is suddenly on another plane, sitting in the middle of a city on Arcadia. So as the fight goes on, the players go on. They eventually defeated Kios. Very, very climactic. And this was a tough battle, too. The players were very, very tough. The characters were very tough. But,
we were very powerful.
Yeah. So they were eventually victorious. They managed to defeat him. And then after they do so, they look around and they realize, we're not on the material plane anymore. And they realize they're in the middle of this city. And from behind buildings and such, people start coming out from behind the buildings. And they realize, so this campaign had two main plot threads, one of which was Kios, and the other was this race of beings called the Vadi. The Vadi were these kind of androgynous beings from thousands of years ago. For anybody who's very familiar with Greyhawk mythology, there's an artifact called the Rod of 7 Parts, which was also featured in this campaign. It was this rod, this strongly, lawfully aligned rod that was created to destroy this being of chaos. Whoever, I can't remember what the name of the hero's name was, but this hero used the rod, stabbed it into the being of chaos, and it killed the being of chaos, but the rod shattered into 7 pieces, which scattered themselves across the multiverse. And then if you can gather them all up and put them together, it grants you a wish by summoning a dragon. Oh, wait, no, those are the Dragon Balls.
Oh, sorry.
But anyway, so the race of beings, the Vadi, are a big part of the backstory of this campaign.
Right.
And when the players go through, they actually encounter some remnants of the Vadi race.
Right. There's the 2 swords.
They find these 2 swords that are freaking awesome. Jay based his entire character around the idea of eventually getting those 2 swords, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So as the campaign was going on, that plot thread kind of gets lost. It sort of gets incorporated into the Kios arc, but not really. Well, at one point I got wondering, what happened to the rest of the Vadi? They weren't killed off.
They just sort of disappeared.
The best I could tell is they just kind of disappeared. They all ran off and hid somewhere. Cut forward again to the final encounter of the campaign where the players randomly end up on this lawfully aligned plane, and the people that sort of poke their heads out from behind the buildings are the lawfully aligned race of the Vadi. So basically, going completely off of random rolls.
Right, just kind of stumbled onto this.
Yeah, so I decided that the players stumbled upon the remnants of the Vadi race who kind of jump-started this whole thing. So, I think...
No, that's definitely an adventure that I remember a lot. It's just remember that one time when a god destroyed a Sphere of Annihilation we brought from like just like all these little things happening to then like suddenly be transported to this lost civilization that we've been kind of somewhat chasing for a while.
Kind of, yeah. So I think that was a good example, Jeff. I think that was really cool. I'm not trying to toot my own horn.
You're right.
I'm saying,
I am a good DM.
I'm saying like there was a lot of really cool stuff in that campaign. I think your choice of which cool thing was a good example for how a DM can do something that's really cool.
You take a random roll and use it to your advantage.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, like in the Adventure Zone, the DM in that is amazing. And one of the things I love is that he makes the players feel awesome, and he is constantly finding ways to tie in earlier things into a later thing to make it all come together. Yeah. I think I think that's really cool when I'm able to do it. And when other DMs do it, it's so cool. That's one of the best things you can do as a DM.
It's like, it's very satisfying. It's just, it feels good.
And
for
like
everybody.
That's a reason why a DM should be really good at improvising.
Sure.
Because you should be able to take what happens, whether you planned it or not, and turn it into something really cool.
Mm-hmm. This next question comes from Kai, and she writes through Reddit, when is it okay to split the party?
If I had to give a simple answer to this, the answer would be whenever possible, with the caveat, as long as it doesn't take up too much game time.
Sure.
It's kind of the mantra of players, or the joke sometimes, never split the party, which, there's good reason for not wanting to split the party.
Right. Anybody who's seen an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Right. Or any horror movie ever.
Right.
But I think that sometimes players take it a little bit too far. Mm-hmm. There have been times where I've been DMing something, and then player one says, "Okay, I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to go buy some potions." And I'm like, "Okay, player one's doing that. Player two, what are you doing?" And player two's like, "What do you mean? We're all going to the temple." It's like, well,
no, you don't.
Why? Well, what if something happens?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, sometimes players take it a little bit too far to the point where they refuse to ever do anything on their own, even when story-wise it would make perfect sense.
Sure. It's, whether it be they don't want to miss something or they don't want to be, like, I think in a lot of cases, like, players always feel like the DM is just waiting for an opportunity to set them up or to kill them or something like that. So maybe they're just like, all right, we always have to be on guard. Always stay in formation. That the warrior stands in the front. That whole thing.
Yeah, I guess there is reason for that. I can't blame players for wanting to not die.
All right, sure.
But I think that it can be so much more interesting narratively speaking, as well as just. Cool story stuff can happen when the players are forced to be separate for some reason.
Yeah.
Not saying the players should always go off on their own when there's monsters around, but just to dial it back a little bit.
Right.
If it would make sense for your characters to split up to do something, there's a reason that people, the idea of splitting up to cover more ground, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. So if there is time constraints and you're looking for something or whatever, it would make sense to split up.
Or if your character has some sort of ulterior motive or something.
Well, yeah,
like that.
Exactly.
You could be like, I'm going to go check the room for monsters. And really you're off, dealing with, you're making a deal with the bad guy or something.
You're making a deal with the mountain witch to deliver your Ronin party members to something, and I don't know, reference to our earlier episode. I think it can be cool. Mm-hmm. There can be cool, things that can happen if you split the party, and just trust that your DM isn't going to throw a full party encounter at half the party.
Right.
Of course there are DMs that are going to take advantage of that and so on. But
yeah, the DMs that pride themselves on their player kill count.
Right. I'm rolling my eyes very hard for anybody out there. Now, that being said, there is a downside to splitting up the party, not just, narratively speaking. A lot of the reason that the don't split the party, concept came around is that when you split the party, you're also splitting the DM's attention.
Right.
If you have a group of 4 players, if the DM is going to spend 1 hour telling those 4 players what happens, if they split up, he now has to spend 2 hours because he has to give 1 hour to this group and 1 hour to this group.
Right.
That, number one, means less stuff is going to happen to each player at the table.
Right.
But that also means that for an entire hour, half the party just has to sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, this becomes a huge problem when combat gets involved, when one half of the party is in combat and the other half is not.
Yes.
So that then puts the entire game into turns, which once you get into turns in combat, stuff takes a while. Stuff takes a while to get through that. So when one person is just doing something as simple as searching a room for an item or something, but they have to wait the rounds, or they have to do it in rounds, or or they get ignored completely. And it's always like, okay, this fight is going on. How far away is the other party? Can they hear the battle going on? Okay, they do. Now, how many rounds is it going to take for them to get to there? Do they encounter anything on the way? It just it ends up making, like you said, it just somebody is just going to be waiting around doing nothing.
Yeah. And this actually can be a serious problem with, whether it's intentional or not, people that are hogging the spotlight. If there's always the one player that when the players are in town and like half the group is getting ready to go do something, and the one player is like, oh, hey, DM, I want to go and I want to go do this thing that you didn't have prepared. And the DM's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you do that. And then it ends up being really involved. Then again, so the DM has to like put everything else aside and be like, okay, yeah, you do this, and then that happens, and then make a roll. Yeah, then this happens. And so it can be fairly disruptive.
Right.
So, again, I can totally understand players not wanting or encouraging people to stick together rather than splitting up. But I think a good DM can find ways to work with that as best as possible and make it as undisruptive as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it can make for some really neat situations.
Yeah. I actually do have a neat little story that I want to share with this that took place during the Age of Worms campaign. I know we keep harping on this Age of Worms campaign, but it was a lot of fun. There was a time in this where a player did do something off on their own to hilarious effect.
Okay.
This is going to be a bit of a spoiler for anybody who is going to be playing the Age of Worms, which is probably going to be nobody. But there is an adventure that involves a doppelganger.
Oh.
Now, this story doesn't have to do with the doppelganger. It just has to do with that adventure. At the end of that adventure, once everything was said and done, you guys, you managed to retrieve the party member that had been replaced with the doppelganger and so on. One of the players, though, Steve's character, Shadowhane Silverbones, the gnome cleric barbarian, was very upset.
Yeah.
He was like emotionally distraught at the fact that a member of the group had been kidnapped and replaced, and like there was a serious invasion,
right?
In the physical and metaphorical sense.
Yeah, it's like as a shock to one's reality that you can be abducted and impersonated.
Yes, and so he was very upset after you guys had rescued. It was actually your character, Jeff, that got replaced by the doppelganger.
I remember.
For anybody listening, before the adventure, I had gotten together with Jeff and I said, "Hey, I want to replace your character with a doppelganger. Here's how I want you to do it." So Jeff was actually playing as the doppelganger. And then I'll tease something for a future episode. They encountered that doppelganger at a later point in the campaign. They chose to spare the doppelganger's life.
Oh, right.
They met the doppelganger as part of another adventuring party.
I forgot about that.
The other members of that party were very appropriate for what happened. I'll just tease you with that. Someday in the future, for anybody who's binge listening to this in the future when we have 1,000 episodes out, you will hear the rest of this story. So anyway,
no one will be alive then.
I don't know. So they stopped the doppelganger. They got Jeff's character back. Steve's character, Shadowhane Silverbones, or just Bones, was very upset. So Bones kind of walked away and he kind of, went off on his own. They were in this sewer complex, which the players hadn't completely cleared out.
Oh.
So Bones just kind of upset. He just kind of walks off all mopey, the na 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 na. The Charlie Brown music starts playing.
Sure.
And he's walking along.
The kicking dirt.
Out of character. His character wanders into a room where there was a Vrock. A Vrock is a demon, a fairly powerful demon for this. This was early in the campaign, so this was a moderately powerful demon. A Vrock had been trapped in a temporal stasis or something. And then when the party enters the room, they somehow deactivate the temporal stasis and then they fight a Vrock. Well, Steve's character, Bones, was just kind of moping around, wandering through this complex, walks into this room without even realizing what he's doing, unknowingly deactivates this temporal stasis and comes face to face with a challenge that is way too powerful. Like, this was a challenge for the entire party.
Right.
Well,
Oh, goodness.
in character, he wasn't the brightest crayon in the box, but he's just kind of moping along, and suddenly this demon shows up without even missing a beat. He's like, I said leave me alone, and he swings his axe, crits, and does a ton of damage, and one-shots a Vrok. He one-shotted this demon that was supposed to be a challenge for the entire party, because he was a very, very powerful character with a ×3 critical D12 weapon.
Yeah. I mean,
that I think at this point was adamantine. But and then just walks on, doesn't even commit it to memory. So when he meets back up with the rest of the party and they're like, Bones, where were you? He's like, I don't know. I was upset. None of the other characters learned about this. He just, there you go, went off on his own, and something awesome and memorable happened.
And he did not remember.
In character, didn't remember. Steve, the player, of course, was like through the roof that he didn't die. But hilarious thing
Right. I mean,
happened.
like, yeah, as powerful as he was, and like very powerful he was.
Yes.
Like,
Yes,
it
he was.
still could have ended very, very badly.
It should have ended very badly, but lucky rolls, and
and
it went well.
A powerful character, but also very lucky rolls.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, I think that you should split up the party whenever it makes sense. Maybe I should amend my earlier statement. Let's go back and re-record the whole podcast.
Okay.
I should probably amend my earlier statement. Don't split up whenever possible. Split up whenever appropriate.
Sure.
As long as it's not taking up too much game time.
Yeah.
And a good DM will have ways of mitigating how much game time it takes up.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, be careful. Be careful with it, because it can ruin a session.
It can. Yeah.
But it can also be a very powerful tool for having fun.
Yeah. And as a player, try to recognize that if you're doing something separate from the rest of the party, recognize that what you're doing is taking up a lot of time. And so you as the player can try to mitigate that as well. If you realize like, oh crap, the whole party's waiting for me to finish this thing, just say to the DM like, okay, I'll just do this and then I'm done.
Yeah.
So just try to be accommodating on both sides.
Yeah, try not to hog the spotlight, at least in those situations.
Right.
Because it will take a little extra time just because everybody's split up. But be considerate, but, still have fun.
Yeah. All right, I think we got time for one more.
Yeah, sure. All right, this next question comes from Gossip Golem.
Great name.
That's a good one. I like it. You send it through email. Email is InterPartyConflict@gmail.com.
Yes.
What do you do when one or more of your players can't make it to a session and you still want to have a meaningful game?
This is something that I've struggled with a lot. There's three possible options here. Mm-hmm. The first one is don't run the game that day. Just cancel it and do it again some other time.
Kind of like a last resort sort of
I guess,
thing, sometimes it's going to happen.
I put that first because I'm trying to go from like the worst idea to the best idea.
Okay.
So yeah, you shouldn't do it unless you have to, because nobody's going to enjoy that. I guess it means that you can sit at home and play Zelda Breath of the Wild, but hopefully you're listening to this at a time when that game isn't quite as newsworthy. But anyway, so the first option is you could cancel the game, but you shouldn't. The second option, which is slightly less bad, but still not necessarily optimal, is you can run the game and just not have that player present. Mm-hmm. And there's even two ways of doing that. Number one, you can have it be that player's character has a reason to not be there. Mm-hmm. They're depending on the situation. Maybe you kind of ended at a bad moment the previous session, so maybe you can't do this. But if possible, you could say that, that character is off doing something else, and then you can come up with something cool to tell that player about what happened with their character.
Yeah, the paladin left the stove on.
I was thinking something a little bit more substantial, but I guess that works too. Or you can just kind of say, well, that character is there thematically, but we're just going to imagine that they're not.
Right.
So that, let's say the session ends with the players in a locked room. Like, you want to say, okay, well, if that player is there next session, he's just in the room with them instead of having to then come up with a way to, we're going back to splitting the party here. You would then have to spend like possibly half the session getting that character to the other players. Now, you could use that to your advantage, actually.
Right, that could make for an interesting
You could,
session.
because then that character could be the one that gets them out of that locked room.
Right.
But it's easier a lot of the time. Whether it's better or not is up for debate, but it's easier a lot of the time to just say they were there the whole time. Don't think about it too hard.
Right.
So that was option 1 was don't play. Options 2A and 2B are to have play without the player, basically. And then option 3 is to come up with something else that is still fun for the players, but is not necessarily part of the main campaign.
Right.
Now, Gossip Golem actually gave a really good example of what he did in this case. I'll get to that in just a minute. But some things that I've done in this case, there have been times where not everybody was able to come. So what I did was I ran a smaller adventure for the players that are present, for the player characters that are present. Let's say during Age of Worms, it was just the 3 players. It was UJ, and Steve. Let's say Jay wasn't able to make it one time. I might do a short little mini adventure for just you and Steve, for your character and Steve's character.
Sure.
I might do a short mini adventure for just you, and then a short mini adventure for just Steve.
Right, yeah.
You know, that's not always possible. It might be, like I said, maybe you guys were in this locked room last session. I can't necessarily do that. We could, I don't know, retcon something and say, oh, this happened last week or whatever. You know, there's ways to get around that.
Right.
You could even say like, oh, use an earlier character sheet of yours. This is something that happened at the beginning of the campaign or something.
Okay. That should be like a flashback that.
Yeah. There's fun things you can do with this.
Yeah.
What Gossip Golem did.
And I like this a lot.
Is really cool. He made a special one-shot adventure for his players where each of the players played as an NPC from that campaign.
I like that a lot.
Which is a really, really cool idea. And I'll see if I can put this in the show notes. He gave me there's a post on Reddit that he did of how he did this and like how it turned out and all the work that it went into it. Because I imagine that this has a lot of work that goes into it, similar to just planning a normal session, possibly more so because now you have to plan, all stuff with new characters and everything.
Yeah.
So you might not necessarily be able to do this if you don't have a lot of advance notice, but if you do, you can really do something cool with this. There's really a lot of potential of cool stuff you can do. Yeah. I think some of our neatest things that happened in the Age of Worms campaign were like unique little things that I did with each of you individually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had a bunch of nice little like one-on-one things.
Yeah. I did a lot I tried to foreshadow a lot of stuff early on with there was a one-on-one adventure. Maybe I was just with Jay. Maybe this isn't as good of an example as I thought it was. There's a thing that I did with Jay where I had his character break into something or other and do something with some MacGuffin. This is a great story I'm telling here.
This is fantastic.
But at one point he comes across this ancient painting or this mural that sort of depicted your characters, but not quite. There was a thing later on in the campaign where you guys went into a flashback thousands of years in the past. So it wasn't actually you, but it was your ancestors. And Jay was seeing a depiction of that.
Right. I do remember that now. Yeah, there was it was a fountain or something we came across that was
there was this fountain that you drink from it and then it gives you a vision of something that happened of this thing from the past that was sealed away so nobody would be able to learn it until somebody drank from this fountain. Right. So that was a little one-on-one adventure I did with Jay. I gave Steve, in one of his one-on-one things, I gave him a suit of armor that was originally an iron golem. I had him fight a miniature iron golem.
Right, a gnome-sized...
A gnome-sized iron golem.
So
and
then he could then turn it into a suit of armor.
Yes, he killed it, took out all the machinery, and just climbed inside.
This is nice and snug.
Yes. And then your character, I think your character at the time was you were a noble. And I had you go to a nobles party where you got into a battle of wits with another noble.
Oh, sure.
And I gave you an infamous bit of advice as part of your battle of the wits. Do you recall what that bit of advice was?
I don't know.
You rolled really high on this. You and this other noble were going back and forth with, oh yeah, well, this piece of information and this piece of information. And so I had your character as the climactic, nail in the coffin. You said, you got it? You got it?
I got it.
What'd you say?
As it, when in doubt, jump on the wheel?
Yes, when in doubt, jump on the wheel, which is a deep cut to anybody who played World of Warcraft in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, vanilla World of Warcraft, the Dead Mines dungeon.
Yes, in Dead Mines, there's an account. There was a couple encounters very close to the end that could go south real easy because of wandering enemies.
Yeah.
And there was this little bit of geography that you could jump onto that the AI was not equipped to handle.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't part of like the pathing of the AI, so they couldn't reach you, even though you were physically
you were like 10 feet away.
Like, but the computer just was like, well, he's just gone.
Yeah. So if somebody ever accidentally pulled too many enemies in this part of the encounter, when in doubt, jump on the wheel.
Right.
If you're afraid that the battle might go south, jump on the wheel, because at the very least, it'll stop you from getting attacked.
Yeah.
At best, it'll stop the encounter so that you can regroup, maybe even like wait for a party member that died to come back.
There's also the tactic where the healer would just sit on the wheel and heal everybody and not get attacked.
Yes. We were playing World of Warcraft at the time, and so it was just a funny little bit of trivia. When in doubt, jump on the wheel.
And that was like everyone at the party started clapping.
yes, exactly.
Like, oh yes, of course.
Yeah, so I think some really fun stuff has happened as a result of not everybody being at a session.
Right.
And Gossip Golem's idea of having the players like play as the NPCs, I think is really, really cool.
I think it's a great idea.
It's such a great way to get the players more engaged in the campaign.
Exactly.
Because there might be an NPC that like they never really thought about. Mm-hmm. And then now they're not only thinking about it, they are taking the role of that NPC. I guarantee you from that point on, that character is going to remember that NPC forever.
Right,
and
sure.
is probably going to interact with that NPC a lot.
Yeah, and it's fun to like play a different character every once in a while, like because I don't want to say people are going to get bored of their characters, but like what would it be like to be this person? Like maybe the player who's normally a fighter character will play
as a mage or something.
Yeah, exactly. It gives a little bit of it'll be like a nice little like refreshing like sort of.
Just a change of pace.
Yeah, exactly.
A change of pace is rarely a bad thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's such a cool idea, and there's so much that can be gotten from that.
Well done, Gossip Golem.
Yes, and well done with that name.
Yes, that's a good one.
All right, well, I think that will do it for today.
Okay.
I think this has been a good 10th episode. Hopefully we'll have 10 more, and then 10 after that, and maybe 10 after that. We'll see.
Yeah.
If anybody would like to submit items and questions.
Yay, 10 episodes!
That is my beautiful wife, Lisa. I'm not sure how well you could hear her, but I'll see if I can clean it up in post. For anybody who would like to submit items or questions, email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, and for important links, or to download the episode, go to interpartyconflict.blogspot.com. There should be a link to our SoundCloud page on there. You can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, or our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict for weekly discussion questions from me. We're also on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We're also on iTunes, Google Play Music, and Stitcher. Please rate, review, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And our intro and outro music is Inspiration by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG.
Gabe, behind you. It's Tasha's hideous daughter.
Oh no! Ah!